Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're very welcome to this. It's a podcast, and it's all about the Irish League, where the title's been sorted for a while. Loughgall's fate is now officially sorted. Cliftonville are only a collapse away from 7th being sorted for them, but that second place chase still eludes us all. Can the Glens or Larne make a key step towards securing guaranteed European football for them this week after both teams kept pace with each other over the weekend? We'll also chat about what goes on behind the scenes when it comes to an Irish League team picking its kit for the following season on this, your latest weekly edition of Kick and Match. It's time to get down to some Irish League podding this week in the company of Keelan Leeper.
Well, how are we?
I'm doing alright. Have you looked through 15 years of social media, your family tree over the past day or so to try and figure out your tenuous link to a golfer that we have coming from this part of the world?
I've very little links to the golfers. I do know people who know it. I watched it. I was delighted. My takeaway as somebody who doesn't follow golf was sports magical, and Northern Ireland is the greatest country in the world, which I think is the only takeaway.
You don't need to preface that as someone that doesn't watch golf. Nobody realistically in this country watches golf as much as they seem to imply over the past day or so. And were you in an office environment, let's just say, today?
Yeah, it's all the talk, isn't it? And absolutely everybody was watching. Thoroughly entertaining. And
it was.
Yeah.
It was, but we've lost the run of ourselves.
Yeah, I know. We're starting to. Yeah, what next week, Bones?
Lads of this aisle, we have completely lost the run of ourselves. It's exciting. I think he probably now, as if he maybe wasn't guaranteed that ever, he's up there now as the greatest sportsman that Northern Ireland's produced, potentially the island of Ireland has produced. There might even be an argument to say that he is British Isles. We're talking, not to be that guy, but you know what I'm saying. Like he is. Let's leave that there, because everyone else has heard about golf. So let's spin the golf and let's. Yeah, I mean, there was actually football, wasn't there? I'm pretty sure there was.
Yeah, one of 6 career.
I definitely think I was at a game.
Yeah.
We've got 2 more game weeks to go. And one of the things that happened then over the weekend was those NIFL Awards. Was a collection of awards across the awards season. We now have 2 main ones. We have the NIFL Awards and the Football Writers. And the NIFL Awards were the ones that had their shindig on Saturday night. Lots of managers, players, and the rest getting their wee pictures taken with their dicky bows, and no real surprises. And in the season that has been, and knowing the contenders going in, it's probably not something where you do want a surprise.
No, I think I enjoyed looking through the nominations when they came out. I don't think there was anything overly surprising in terms of what came out of that. And I think in terms of the winners, there wasn't any major upsets. It seemed to be a great evening, though. I was talking today to a couple of people who'd been up and whatnot, and look, if there's one thing that I think when you're trying to grow the Irish League, it needs to be taken a wee bit more seriously. Jared Lawler has talked in the past about getting away from this Irish League behaviour. So a nice big fancy shindig and fancy awards in a great venue down there at Titanic can only be good for sort of the seriousness of the league.
And as serious as that is, I do look at it and think, how much were the pints? Is that the first thing I think of when you see those big events? You're like, what are they charging there? I become an old when I get to that zone. But yes, we have Joe Cooper as the player of the year. It would have been a shock, really, if it was anybody else. He has had one of, and I said this last week, one of the greatest seasons for a player this year. He has been the reason why Linfield have been so dominant, a weird word to use, but have been so consistent in their march towards it. They have week in and week out got the result. To say it hasn't always been pretty is more suggesting that it's been a touch methodical, but that's okay. It's important to have methodology in these trots to the title, and he keeps doing his thing. And again, he was a part of one of the storylines of this week, not to prop up the competitor, but Beltel did a wee interview with him where he came out and he said his piece. It's funny, I feel like on the Monday podcast of my own last week, I was bigging up about how this Joe Cooper fella, I mean, he's just been able to deal with this multi-month exodus so well. He's played well, he's got the goals, he's kept to himself. Okay, he's at a Coleraine game, that's fine. I mean, as much as every man, woman, child, dog, and the rest knew by the reporting and the lack of denials that this move was on, it was the first time, at least for me, I can say that he is 100% moving to Coleraine. And, I mean, he said his piece. Interesting choice to say his piece before the end of the season, but look, for Linfield, it's all over anyway. But nothing that totally surprised me, but in turn, I understand if you're a Linfield fan, you're thinking, don't do it now. I thought we said we were just splitting ways. Yes, we're splitting each other's ways, but you didn't offer me a big contract, you know. It was an interesting listen.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. I think it's always nice to hear it from the horse's mouth when there are all these rumors about what's going on and whatnot. I think Joel spoke very well. He made his case very clear. Put it this way, David Jeffrey was satisfied, and I guess that was going to be his biggest obstacle on that podcast. I think Jeffrey believed he had been, was the word, ill-advised in terms of going to Coleraine that day. That was the day I was up, obviously. That was the Portadown match, in which we failed to make top six, and I did see Cooper. My worry actually was, as he was standing around for some photos just to my right with Henry Ross, etc., that they were going to take the signing photo. I thought, oh no, son, that is not the thing to do at this stage. But no, look, at the end of the day, he had no game on himself. He sort of said himself, oh, it was the go-to match to go to that day. I think it's because you're going there. You're going to suss out.
Well, it was actually the go-to day. I'll say that. I appreciate you don't want to pump up your Portadown, but even I was down at that game with the Around the Grounds boys because I think it was the commentary game on radio as well.
Yep.
So I would argue that was the game of the day. So he has got a technicality there.
Yeah, he does. And look, I think he made his case very, very clear. He spoke very well. You know, he did talk about sort of that frustration in terms of looking at 3-year deal and that stability, and that he wasn't offered it at least initially. He sort of implied that it was offered after the agreement with Coleraine to sort of cover their backs. But no, he spoke very well of the fans, and I think the point that David Jeffrey made kind of sums and puts the whole issue to bed for me. Is that, you know, there was no drop in performance, there was no downing of tools. He came out against Dungannon under difficult circumstances and put in another, you know, stellar performance. He never stopped playing for the shirt. There's very little for me, if you're a Linfield fan, that you can, and I know they will often try to find something, but there's very little you can be cross at.
Of course, and those will recall all the discussions we had on this podcast come December, that there was a lot for Linfield to measure up and think about. There continues to be discussion, at least externally, that the current full-time status of the club, they're not totally wedded to it. That's at least what I'm hearing. And to make such a commitment to a player beyond the 2-3 years, are they a club, and they didn't know if they're going to win this league, were they a club that really wanted to make that commitment, and how much, because every contract realistically for an Irish League club at a certain price level is anchor round the neck, and when it's all cooking, it's all going well, then hey, money well spent. But when it's not, it can stick in the craw, and as well as that, only so much can be spent. And if it's all going on player X, or a section of it is going to player X and that they're not contributing, and that can be via the standard that you wish they were playing to, they're out injured, that is going to be something that can mean that you don't have the flexibility that perhaps a club might want. And look, no player is guaranteed when they sign a contract that they'll play a single minute, yet a single season, multiple seasons. So nothing is guaranteed in this. And as we said back in December, Joe Cooper, we're all looking at him, thinking about all the great things he's done, but the past few seasons he has not been available at all times, and with that, he is in a position at an age where you would start to have concerns around regression, and you also might have concerns around, is that durability going to improve or deteriorate? We'll all be laughing if in 5 years with Corey and that he is set to be with, and he does the full contract, he plays whatever it is, over 100 games. Brilliant. And I'm sure that's what they're hoping for, and you can't think that it's going to be anything else. But it was, and clubs have to do this all the time, it had to be something where they're measuring up. And some Linfield fans will think it was a cautious or an overly cautious move from Linfield to not lock in a player of his standard. Look, I think at the time we even compared it to the Salah discussions. And now Liverpool did the opposite to Linfield, where they locked in their man. So, of course, the only thing that will prove to settle this argument will be, of course, what happens in the future. If you think you were a fan who was wearing the blue of Linfield rather than the red of Portadown, weighing it all up, would you like, and it's not apples for apples here, but let's say it's Cooper and or Morrison and Offord. Do you understand the team building decision that Linfield made?
Yeah, I think I do. Look, it's very hard, especially after the season he's had, to look at a player like Joe Cooper and imagine not, trying to, especially the impact he's had on the team this season, and saying that, oh, what, we're not going to have him next season. But there definitely is a team building element. I mean, we'll get into talking about the games this week. I think when you watch Linfield this weekend, the likes of Offord kind of coming into his own, other players coming into that starting lineup, you still obviously Fitzy firing on all cylinders, and the likes of Morrison coming into that squad. Look, it's a dangerous attack, and if you're able to build that attack, it's probably better than potentially sinking all your eggs into one basket with Cooper. And as you say, um, God willing, he's injury free and stuff like that, because he's a fantastic fella and he's exciting to watch. But as you said, there's nothing guaranteed, and if you go and put everything on a high salary 3 year contract for Cooper, and the wheels do fall off, you're in a difficult position in terms of what else you can bring in there.
Returning back to the awards there on Saturday night, there were wins, unsurprisingly, for Arthur's Championship Player of the Year, and Rodney Macquarie being Manager of the Year as well. There's also actually a nice little award for David Jeffrey, who got Lifetime Achievement, and I was actually chatting to him if I could be Mr. ITK, and he didn't know about it. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's lovely. I think I did see him chatting afterwards, where he had been consulted for a lot of the awards, obviously, as a man who is well associated with the league and whose opinion is regarded very highly. So he had been consulted in terms of nominations for other awards, and I think he said he felt that his invitation was more based on that, and I guess sort of him being about the league than any potential award. Look, it's richly deserved. I can give David Jeffrey a bit of a slagging, like any fan likes to do, because he is one of those larger than life characters who's been about the league for so long, and does divide opinion. But I think most people will, when you come down to brass tacks, will tell you he is Mr. Irish League in so many ways for the past decade or more, and it's good to see him recognised that way.
Two of your boys were in for goal of the season, Ahu Ubakan for his little heel flick against Cliftonville, and the big long range rocket from Shea McCartan against Larne. They were defeated by former Port and regular goal scorer against Portadown, Jordan Jenkins. He didn't win for his goal against Portadown. It was the Thunderbolt against Cliftonville. A thing of beauty, that goal.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, we've talked about the standard of decision making in this league, Peter, and once again, it goes against Portadown. Two wonderful strikes, not in with a shout. But I think we discussed this. Obviously, you were down doing the radio for the Portadown game. Look, I think Shea's goal is 1 in a million. I think Ahu's goal is 1 in a million. But if you do want to look at, there's an element of fortune in both of those goals. There's a bit of magic, but there is an element of good fortune. Whereas I think Jenkins, it's so sweet, it's so deliberate. When you're talking about the goal that takes the most skill, it probably is that. So I don't think, all joking aside, that we can be too aggrieved to miss out on that.
Going to the games then on Saturday, we'll go with Linfield because we were just chatting about them. Their win 2-0 against Dungannon Swifts at Windsor Park, and I did question, wasn't the only one, but I did question, Linfield win the title, what are they going to do between now and the end of the season? And they just keep winning out. They even played a number of fringe players, wouldn't say reserves, but a number of fringe players, and they get the job done. They look so fit, determined, and I keep thinking about what's been one of the real key traits of this Linfield title winning season. And a lot of it does come down to mentality. They might not have had, across the pitch, the most excitingly talented players, but there is real quality in this team, and they've rarely completely had a wobbler at any point, even when they've been behind the eight ball, and that's been a real rarity. Have they maybe been shook in the big games against Glentoran? It's hard to argue that hasn't been the case. They've kept their nerve continually against the bottom six sides, and they always seem to have won that decisive mental battle against the other top six sides. The middle of the table maybe has fallen down a wee bit. We've talked about it being in flux, while Linfield have stayed strong. But 2-0 against Dungannon, players who haven't been big parts of this squad this season scoring the goals. It seems like a total summarization of what this team has been about this term.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch it, it's funny you should mention that. There is always this question, for a team like Linfield, having already won the title, in terms of cup competitions and whatnot, that there's nothing necessarily building there. It's how do you approach those last games? Do you blood new players? Do you try other things? I think you're exactly right. It nearly seems to be business as usual with a few tweaks, and it's probably the right move. I mean, when I was watching back aspects of that game, um, it's good to get these players, and you think, of the likes of Morrison and Offord, who've just come into the squad. Take all this game time that you can get, because I mean, we can talk about having good pre-seasons and whatnot, but there's nothing like 90 minutes of league football, in terms of experience. I thought in terms of the game, Linfield sort of dominated in that way you expect them to at Windsor. I thought, a lot of the first half threat came from them. Offord in particular, I thought, here's a man who has arrived in a blue shirt, and just looks like he's been there all season. Really, really fantastic.
Disappointment though, not only on a Linfield level, but I guess just for everybody within the league. A man who's been plagued with some crushing injuries that has gone on for 2 seasons now. It's halted his Linfield career taking off at all, and even in any way taking flight. Rob McDaid, after his long return to the team, subbed off after 20 minutes. That's tough.
Yeah, ugh, you never like to see it, especially, when there's a player that has hit real heights of form, and can be an exciting watch. And I'd say it's a very, very difficult situation for him. It's tough. It's tough. There's very little else you can say about it. Injury, is really, really cruel. 20 minutes, it just shows you. And I mean, we've seen it at Portadown. I'm sure Paul wouldn't mind me mentioning he is, really struggled with injury the last couple of years, and we had a few, sort of nearly there, on for a bit, off a bit. It's very frustrating for a player. They're down to get back and play football, down to make an impact. Particularly, while the years are with them. And for McDaid, it does seem to be an ongoing struggle that's not quite over.
You also look at this Linfield team, and I think some people who aren't fans of the Blues will look at it and go, what about all these players? What will it mean for them? Because they've had a taste of this season. We saw Ewan East, he's sticking around. That means then that there isn't going to be other players jumping in, or if there is other players jumping in, some people down that depth chart Where will they go? You also see some of these players come in who have been on the fringes now for close to 3 seasons or so. So as this season comes to an end, they've been loyal backups without being able to break into the team on a consistent level. And perhaps being at that level they are, they believe next season's going to be the year where they break through. But I am looking at Annette McDaid. Don't know what his contract status is. If he is healthy, is he going to be out in the market? Will Scott Whiteside want to continue to be a player on the bench? I think he's played this year, that's no doubt. But, Josh Archer's another one. And Brian McKay hasn't really got a chance. He's a young player. Out at left back, McBrien has had a lot of injuries. The feeling, without any true locked in numbers or facts, the feeling is that this summer could be one of those wild big changes, as teams have seen actually that the teams that have gambled or been aggressive in the transfer market have broadly been rewarded with that. So for Linfield, they've done a lot of the hard work in getting those big names across the line and into the squad for the summer. Morrison and Offord, or signed a new deal, but he's such a young talent that this season's going to be one where plenty will take a look at him. But for Linfield, could they face a battle of, okay, we've got some of the big players in, do we need to almost refill the next generation? That youth setup is where some of the best players this entire country produces comes from, so there's always players to emerge. But if there's even a mid-table manager, a manager of all areas within this league, one place where you're maybe looking at your shopping list or looking at a menu to try and see what you might need, the Linfield bench is one that oftentimes bears fruit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of players there with a lot of talent, and actually, you as you talked about some of them making an appearance and a real impact there on Saturday. I think it's Mackay at one point really threatens the goalkeeper, looks really good on the ball for a lot of that game. Josh Archer gets himself on the score sheet. Somebody I don't mind saying I'm a big fan of. When he was at Portadown, really felt wow, there's a real player there. It's hard to know what the mentality is when you're a young player in that Linfield side. Is there a boost in terms of I can kick on here and it's about me trying to break into the squad? Is there an element of you go, well, you know what, I'm getting minutes and maybe I'm a squad player, but look, at the end of the season, delayed or not, I'm getting my guard of honor and I'm maybe getting my medal, etc. etc. It's hard to know.
For Dungannon, this hasn't been a particularly fun top six jaunt. There was a question of, wow, could they keep that momentum of getting into the top six and push on? They haven't found it particularly a place that they've been able to get points. The performances haven't fallen off a cliff, but they have maybe had one eye, which you can totally understand, on the cup final. Strong team. You look at that side and the Swifts, there's lots of murmurings, there's lots of mood music even within the press. Keeping John McGovern is probably going to be the toughest task of the window, and might be one that they already accept isn't one they're going to really win, because the type of names that are being discussed in being interested in a player who I think is a strong contender for a team of the season, something which wasn't actually at the NIFL Awards this year. I know last year it was obviously the Northern Ireland Football Awards, so it was a different ilk. I mean, quality player, and they'll enjoy what could be the last few games of him in a Swift shirt.
Yeah, he's been massive for them season. As you say, holding on to him will be very difficult. I would be interested to see if he does go, where that is, what squad he's strengthening. And for me, if you're John McGovern, is there an aspect of you're the target man, you're the main man at Dungannon, a team that is this a flash in the pan season? Is this a team that's climbing sort of the pecking order? Is maybe that platform of being that main man in the team a benefit? Is there a risk that you go somewhere and again, Benji McGee, we'll talk about the Portadown match. I think Benji McGee is a fantastic player, but when he went to Larne there is this sort of, sometimes you make the step up to the big club and actually your game time dries up, and there is this sort of question mark over where your position is. I'd imagine John McGovern wouldn't want to be in that position, so he'll have decisions to make. The big clubs are always going to attract, certainly going to be enticing, so we'll see what he decides.
Let's then drift to your Portadown boys, a game I was at, Portadown against Loughgall. It was the dagger that finally did eliminate Loughgall, but as we suggested last week, it was going to be the greatest of great escapes if somehow that wasn't going to be the situation come the end of the season. Loughgall have they've fallen away slightly in the past few weeks. I've seen them on a consistent level, and I mean there's been injuries there. They played against Portadown with a makeshift back line, and for all their gusto, Portadown struggled to put that ball in the back of the net until James Keelan had just had enough and thundered it as hard as he could, and he almost hit it so hard it went over the bar. But it went in then, and Portadown just kept on piling the pressure, and they sealed the fate for Loughgall. This is where I ask you the question of, isn't it sad, team going down, what that felt like, etc., 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 local team. I mean, someone had to go down. You're just glad, ain't you?
Yeah, look, there's an aspect to that. I know you've been down at Loughgall a lot this year. I think, and for very good reason, a lot of people are very fond of Loughgall in this league. There's a great sort of spirit around that sort of core that are loyal, regular supporters and have been for years of the club. And there's that whole sort of narrative that came along, and the whole fairy tale of the smallest settlement and all this. But there's some great people at that club. There's some fantastic players at that club. It's a shame to see them go. I thought they were a really nice, worthwhile addition to the league. I think everyone saw that last season. Look, I think they'll go down, and they'll give a good account of themselves, and they'll be sort of hoping to make their way back up. I think Murph will be a very interesting appointment there. Somebody I've sort of been able to keep a wee eye on, somebody with Ballybuffet roots like myself. Finn Harps have sort of been my adoptive League of Ireland team. So look, Murph's an experienced manager. He's been in some excellent setups as assistant, and obviously some first team management experience as well. You'd like to see what he'll be able to do. The real question for Loughgall is, do the buzzards start circling at this point and picking away your real quality talents?
I mean, I put that question to Murphy after the game, and there was he dedicated a bit to Dean Smith and said, fair play to the Dean. He's got a couple of these players under contract, which he hopes they'll honour going into next year. But let's also be fair. A number of these players have spent the past 2 seasons in the top flight, and they'll feel as though, as most players will believe, that particularly if they're a certain age, that they're not for dropping down level of football, they're for at least keeping it at the same, if not pushing on. So some will no doubt, and it's hard to really predict at this point, will believe that they're a top flight footballer and they want to be playing for a club in the top flight. And you're right, I have watched a lot of Loughgall in the past 2 seasons. I'll miss them. I think I'll say that a number of times for this season's out, just because for a team near the bottom, they were entertaining. They played football out. The past few weeks they haven't really shown that. They've been riddled with mistakes and have not been good on the ball. But the time of that fully fit team mixed in with Benji up top and Ferris as this bustling big man, they were great and were always interesting and was often ding dong battles. So there's, I'm sure, a spine of a team that will be there, but the players who don't hang around, it's hard to tell. I think, because you might look at some of the more exciting young players. Everyone knows I'm a big fan of teenager Adam Toe. He's a bustling player, but does he look at this next season and think, I've got something good here. I'll be probably one of the main men this year now that I've established myself in this side, and maybe a year of being one of the big boys, let's say, in this team. Get my more minutes under my belt. I'll be an even better footballer for either the summer or bouncing back up again. I think there's merit to that. I don't know if he walks in or starts really for any other team in this division, no matter how much I like him. And then you have some of the other experienced players, Jordan Gibson. You saw Ryan Wade there score a goal, very nicely taken. And, maybe there's some players that you might think, oh, they're loyal Loughgall players, the Tiernan Kellys and the likes, and they might go, maybe now it's time for me to change it up. So I'm sure they're going to be a very attractive team to go to in the Championship, because you have Darren Murphy, who knows this league inside and out, even knows the Southern League very well from his time at Finn Harps, very passionate, and he will demand success for them next year. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And it'll be a tough year, because as we look at the Championship, there's so much movement, and only 2 of those max are going to be up. And Loughgall will have to see at least 2 of them, and you add in the 3, because if it is just 2 of them near that top, I'm talking about Anna, Limavady and the Welders. If it's only 2 of them, they'll be joined by Carrick. Again, we'll touch on Portadown here. It was a very regimented performance. Wasn't anything special. I'm sure you'll be happy they're scoring goals. But the season kind of came a cropper, really, with that game against Carrick last weekend.
Yeah. Oh, look, there's very little to say about it. My words were, I was very much looking forward to it. Sunny day up Taylor's Avenue, which I don't mind as a wee spot. I love that drive up the coast past the castle. To be honest, I'd have been better off going to the castle. Real rough day at the office. I think now was quite clear. Certainly at halftime, but definitely in his post-match interview as well. They just didn't show up. I think across the board there were very few that got pass marks. Young Damien made his debut, and I see as well this week that he has signed it onto a pro deal. He'll be a player that I think.
Sorry, that's Damien who? Sorry,
Trasikowski. I'm going to go for Peter, and thank you very much for asking me to clarify it.
I saw you dodge that. I think I saw this news online, and I forgot that was going to be one of my first questions. 17-year-old Traczky.
Yeah, Trasikowski or Trasa. Look, I'm not going to pretend to know exactly. I'd have to ask Damien. But look, a player that a lot are ranting and raving about. Portadown, goal scoring midfielder with plenty of goals in the NIFL phases below the first team already. Made a step up, gave a good account of himself. That's really the only bright spark from that game, because, like I say, people didn't show up. Put it this way, when 92 or whatever year old Albert Watson is the man of the match in that game, and has beat centre backs to score a fourth, that's not a game to write home about.
Ben Whiteley got sent off near the end. Kind of a bizarre one. I barely saw it. Any indication on what happened there? It seemed to be a time wasting thing, a bit silly, it feels like there.
Yeah, it's quite an eventful few minutes for Ben Whiteley off the bench. Goes down injured at a point, comes back up, gets a yellow, scores a lovely goal, the 3rd goal of the day, I suppose, if we are talking about this weekend's action. A nice goal, because there was a real fear after Wade hits that beautiful sort of off the post and in hit first time in the 84th minute, that here, if Loughgall throw the kitchen sink at it, there could be a heartbreak equaliser. But no, Ben is able to score that goal, and then he's sent off for what appears to be time wasting at the throw in. I must say I was sort of caught up with updating my full-time graphics, so I didn't get a full view of exactly what happened.
So that result against Carrick makes it difficult, because your pursuit of 7th was always difficult, because Cliftonville had that little advantage over you, and Cliftonville haven't stopped winning since missing out in the top six. In fact, it started before. No, it didn't actually technically, because they were out before the last game of the season. So they've kept winning, which is good for them, and 5 points the difference. So even if Portadown were to defeat Cliftonville on that sandy pitch on Saturday, they would still need Cliftonville to probably lose then at the last game of the season against
I
Loughgall,
believe the
because
situation
the goal
is,
difference isn't good.
yeah, Cliftonville would have to lose both games, and we have to win both for any sort of
Yes, the
impact
goal
there.
difference
Look,
is 16 more. So
yeah,
yes.
yeah. Look, I think the Carrick result is really the sinker there. Even there's an argument maybe for the Mid Ulster Derby, if we'd got the winner there, that might have kept us in that fight. Look, it's been a fantastic season. I'm sure you'll ask the question towards the end of the season, how we look back on it. I'm not going to pull out the Perspective Police badge, but um, to be safe at this stage, to have been second at Christmas in the mixer, right up until the end of the pre-split season for top six, I think it's been absolutely fantastic. And look, there has been a drop off. I'm not going to sit and pretend sunshine lollipops and all that. I think Niall has been very clear. He himself isn't happy with sort of the up and down level that we've had maybe the past sort of month, 2 months. Um, Look, this is football. It's very hard to maintain form over a full season. I think if we had finished in the flying form that we had before Christmas and had the wobbles early on, we'd all be talking about what a success. Um, it just so happens that this is the timeline we're on. I would still certainly be hoping that we make a good account of ourselves. I want us to go and give Cliftonville a game on Saturday, and certainly the Ballymena game as well. I'd like to be not pulling any punches.
Glenavon have used this end of season to blood some young players. I mean, it's their MO. You've got Paul McGovern starting up top. Ben Wilson's a young player. I believe he's a wing back. If my memory serves me correct, he's a big old boy. Interesting enough, David Toure and Len O'Sullivan have been starting these games, even though there's plenty of chat about their contracts coming to an end in Lurgan. But as we said, Cliftonville keep on this streak, and one of the players that is on a streak is Eric McWoods. Scored again to make it two in the 73rd minute. He keeps on scoring, yet he keeps on not starting. He is using his cameo from the benches very, very well. It's funny. Sometimes players who do well coming off the bench pigeonholes them into a role where you're good coming off the bench, lad.
Yeah, you really make a rod for your own back there. When you become the impact man and the game changer, you do find yourself sort of limited to that role. Look, I think the Cliftonville game was sort of classic from what we see from them all season. Their play on the ball is absolutely fantastic, and I know there was this sort of discussion or debate of whether they lift off and save players for the cup final. All this, I think that's out the window because they really haven't lifted at all. Really, really dominant, fast pace player that we're used to seeing at Solitude. The first goal, I think it's really nice. Kearney cross, hit back across goal. Kern puts it in. The second goal, I think, is vintage. I want to say vintage. I actually don't mean vintage. I mean exactly what we expect from modern Cliftonville, which is the ball is, it could be in their own net and they'll still find a way to, within 20 seconds, have it up the pitch with quick passing. I think it's young Madden, who, what a talent, by the way,
Oh yes.
does most of the ball carrying up the pitch, and it's really up to him to just release McWoods at the end, who finishes it.
This is hardly a bold statement to make, but it feels to me, especially with the investment, that Cliftonville are using this tail end of the season to set themselves up, maybe play without the same kind of pressure that they had earlier on in the year. They've got that cup final. They are jaying themselves up very, very well for it. They could be in a good position to just keep things rolling going into next year. We have seen this before, good and bad, where you can go into the next year with just a little bit of momentum in the positives and the negatives, a green or red arrow if we're talking Pro Evo style into the next term, and Cliftonville are well poised with that. You talked about those young players taking it as a step up. I think they will learn a bit from their recruitment and bring in a bit more experience and players who can make a difference for them up and down and across that pitch for them. So I think they've been unlucky in some positions with injuries as well. I think watch it for Cliftonville. Glenalvon, I think it's been job done for a number of weeks, and they will go back and reassess. This transfer window is going to be fascinating for them, because while everybody's zigging, there is this sense that they're trying to zag, and this year they almost got caught out with that. And it's hard to be the stout who isn't getting caught up with paying big flashy going rates, right? But for them, they will have to invest to beef up this squad, or because I think we've seen also recently, because the way the league's moving forward, if you don't try to push up and you're trying to stand still and hope with improvement, any team that stood still recently has faltered. And I think you can look at Cliftonville as one of them. And Glenavon, how much do they go, we need to play the same kind of game as other teams and bank on some good players? I do think they have good players in this team. It looks as though they're going to have to replace both wing backs if O'Sullivan and Toure go. We don't know if other players will move on. Harry Murphy's been playing for them recently. He's likely to make that step up to Glentoran next year, but you never know. Glenavon may want to give him another go next term. It's just they've been resistant to splashing it. I'm not saying they haven't spent money. How much they splash this summer will be interesting. Other games, actually, and the one thing that is on the line in this is the pump for second place, which looks like it's going to go on for a number of the last couple of 2 weeks here. Glentoran, they beat out Crusaders. It's quite a surprising result if you just see it off the cuff. 4 goals to the good against them. Anybody who watches the highlights will see that at home, the Crews had their chances early on thanks to a number of things not being able to finish. Yolai getting some good saves off keeps Glentoran in the game. It's a sweet strike from Patterson to give Glentoran the goals, and that gave them momentum, that gave them the push, that gave them the confidence to go on, and they just kept putting that ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, it's Decky's fighting hands, razor blades and all, absolutely cutting through Crusaders. I think when you watch the goals, you can just see sort of the intensity that they're playing with. Patterson with the first goal, lovely little half volley that he has took down. He's almost immediately, 7 minutes later, involved in the second. He's the one that wins the ball, puts it out to Thompson, who then fires it into Fisher, who I'm delighted to see has got a pair of shorts that fit. Some of that grant money going
well. No, you're not.
I know, you love those tight shorts. They were great shorts. Fisher, speaking of, in the second half, I thought him and JJ for the third goal is a lovely bit of build-up. I think when you talk about Glentoran's woes maybe earlier in the season, struggling to get that chemistry or that sort of scoring factor up top, there are options here now when you have JJ, when you have Fisher, when you have Ferris. There are options in that team, and I think it's a really well worked goal. And then somebody who, I don't know, maybe you'd be able to talk more about this, but a bit of from an outside perspective, a bit of a surprise package. Cody Lance Foster, again, proven to have been a real instrumental bright spark for this resurgent Glentoran, and he gets the little diving header on the end of the free kick for the final goal.
I'm absolutely not surprised by the recent hype around where his future will be, because he does look that certain step up compared to a lot of his, let's say, contemporaries within the league. He looks assured on the ball. He's able to win his aerial battles very well. He has this or of confidence. So who wouldn't want a player like that in their team? And Glentoran are obviously one of those teams who would like that to continue on. Of course, I'm referring to talk that Korean are interested. Maybe that extends even out further west than Korean. So look, Glentoran have good players. They do. Sule's in that bracket that's also drawing attention, and whoever wants him, they'll have to get the checkbook out for him. I understand that there are good players up at that top end of the pitch for Glentoran, but is there a really true consistent difference maker? That's been the issue for them, because we all remember the flashes of Fisher at the end of last year, where you thought, here comes one of the next big Irish League strikers, and through injury and being played out of position at times, he hasn't lived up to those heights this year that were Larne were looking to drag him across their patch. Again, I like Jordan Jenkins as well. I've said that before. And maybe he just needs the right kind of formation, because he also has been played out of position. Ferris has not a run where he gets to say, here, I'm the big guy. And you might say that the way his forward play is knocking in 30 goals, really the type of thing you expect from him. So Glens are good, and I think you've got to give them a bit of credit for how they've reacted, because they let themselves down in the lead up to this split, and then they're able to, they miss out against Linfield, but they take care of business against the Crews. They win out against the resurgent Korean and push them back down. And really, it's now up to Larne, and they had to save their bacon late-ish, and late enough, I'd say, against Korean, and then they have to do it all over again against Linfield this Friday night, and then tackle Glentoran. I think Glentoran are the favourites to lock in this second place. They've got that 1 point advantage over them. They just need to stand firm.
Yeah, look, it's going to be interesting. I feel like we've been talking, as a result of Linfield's form, we've been talking about the second place for a long, long time. There's obviously a lot that rides on it when we talk about Europe, and depending on who's in the cup and who's not. Um, I think Glentoran hold firm on that. I think you're absolutely right. I think it has to be a priority for them. And I think they will out quality Coleraine when it comes to that. Coleraine terrify me in terms of next season, and I know sometimes we overhype what a squad is going to look like on paper versus in practice, but when you look at the likes of Cooper coming in alongside Shevlin and some of the other quality players they already have, when you add to that, other names that are being thrown about, the likes of your Sulas and whatnot, um, that's a frightening prospect. Um, they'll certainly be looking to finish strong, but I think Glentoran will be looking to secure that second spot.
Didn't talk about it last week, not to stir the pot, but just wanted to get your opinion on it. There was a lot of blowback online within some circles to Glentoran not giving Linfield a guard of honour in their game, where Linfield then lifted the trophy. What's your feelings, thoughts? I mean, Dungannon have had to do it twice this season.
Dungannon have loved it though. I mean, look, I have to watch myself here. In terms of a media team, it, if you ever catch me posting a picture of my own team giving a guard of honor with hashtag respect, feel free to throw me into the nearest locker or bin. Get a room for goodness sake. But look, I think sometimes people over egg this stuff. I think if you're a Glentoran fan, you maybe appreciate a wee bit of resistance to that. Linfield certainly didn't mind sticking the boot in terms of the R Trophy returns banner and whatnot. This, to me, it's good natured rivalry. I wouldn't be reading too much into, oh, isn't this a terrible thing for the game, lack of sportsmanship. Guards of honor are important, they're symbolic, but at the end of the day, you know what? When it's your rival lifting that trophy, when they're lifting the trophy with you at their patch, there's nothing wrong with, having a little chip on your shoulder, I guess. And certainly, I don't think any Glentoran fans really mind it that much.
it's funny listening to some people say stuff. I do feel like one of those tradition. What is going on?
Yeah.
What is what like. Again, how much is it baked into the rules? How much is it like? There's something to be said for. Is this their own kind of wind up mind games from Glentoran? There's plenty of people that will feel as though why are these teams having to do it? Glentoran might have felt beforehand, you know what? Why are we giving a guard of honor to a team that hasn't been able to beat us on 4 attempts or even 5 attempts this year, was it? So, whatever. Rivalry, a bit of shindiggery, let's just say. It was interesting talking point. People will feel strong one way or the other. Yeah, Korean. I mean, we were talking there about Cody Lance Foster and about the hype he's got. Another defender who's been getting plenty of hype has been big lad Charles Dunn for Korean. Didn't have his best day on Saturday, did he?
No. Look, somebody has had a lot of hype. I believe was he their player of the month very recently there, if not last month. Somebody has had a big impact. Uh, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the challenge. I already know Dean Shields. He
Wasn't in the box.
wasn't in the box. That's your one. For me, I think it's sort of hard to see on the replay. It does seem to be just outside. I think it's a clear foul. I don't think there's any issue there. It is a question of where it is. Dean Shields certainly feels aggrieved. He seemed to think that, you know, despite the score line that Coleraine had the lion's share of the ball, the lion's share of the chances. And he's putting this one down to a poor decision.
But I mean that happens a lot, doesn't it? For plenty of teams where you have all the chances, but you can't execute. And like I think Dunn didn't cover himself in glory for the Andy Ryan goal. It was a nice little move, but he just gets ousted there at the back. Maybe it's up to the keeper to kind of let him know that fella's going to nip ahead of you. But players can't be perfect all the
I think
time.
it's difficult there. I think actually, if you wanna throw plaudits, Paul O'Neill's ball for that is weighted to perfection. He somehow threads the needle and has it just behind Dunn, just ahead of the goalkeeper, and just in front of Andy Ryan enough that he can poke it round for sort of the easy finish. Perfect little long ball over the top.
Hasn't ever really got the love, Paul O'Neill. There's like a chapter to this career, I think, where he comes in as the bright young spark, moves around, thinks, oh, here's the time at maybe Cliftonville where he'll really find his home. And then Larne comes in and he makes a nice partnership with Lee Bonus, but then Andy Ryan comes in and he's dropped to the floor like Woody. And ever since then, he just hasn't been able to, either consistency or maybe the odd injury, he hasn't been able to establish himself as a number one, but being an important part of a very successful team. It's so hard to judge this Larne team because we all feel kind of dragged back by all these midweek games where they squeak by. And maybe when people talk about giving teams too much respect, perhaps that happened on a number of occasions. Slash Larne just were better midweek because of what we can talk about. This as teams often do, that when you're playing midweek, it's the fitness thing. It's a team that's been preparing all day against a team who's coming off work. Potentially there. So, it's the one thing I can sum this up as, for a team who could finish second. It's weird to go, they could finish second, and I don't think there's one player you'd stick in the team in the season.
No, I don't think I don't.
That might even be a whiff of a contender.
No, I don't think so. I think on Paul O'Neill, I think you make a really good point. We talk very often about how hard it is to find a striker in this league, and when you're looking at a striker, where do you find one? I think Paul O'Neill is nearly a perfect example of what we talked about potentially, that John McGovern would want to avoid, which is a real quality talent, a young talent, a big talent, just getting lost in a lineup that had so much depth. You talk about bonus, you talk about Andy Ryan coming in there, even the likes of Matty Lusty, and all of a sudden O'Neill was just one of four talented forwards that you could look to. O'Neill's somebody I would love to see sort of, and again, I'm not going to put ideas in the
In a
lad's
different
head.
red shirt, mate. Is that what you're saying?
In a different red shirt, I would, yeah, here, well, I would love to, but I'm sort of, he's somebody I would love to go, you know what, um, Andy has dropped me, and I'm going to the playgroup now, and I'm gonna find a new owner, and I'm gonna shine, and Al's Toy Barn is gonna put that new lick of paint on me if I can continue your toy story.
Underrated movie.
Yeah,
Second Toy Story, absolutely underrated. People overlook it, but it's up there. Even though I'm not a fan of the Jesse song. Let's talk about McManus ever so slightly. I mean, what a run! It was such a good run, a good ball from Kane, but I mean, it was a run that was so good that everyone just thought it was offside because you're not supposed to beat the offside trap so well.
yeah. Oh, it's time to perfection. I had to watch it back a little bit, and initially my diagnosis of it was, oh, this is negligent defending. That how has this man got this space? And then you realize, oh, he wasn't in that space. He found it. So look, I don't think anyone is necessarily surprised. Some people are maybe critical when we go for in this league a big striker from somewhere like Wales or something like that, but that run is perfection. Lyndon Kane's ball into him is lovely, and he actually, as you say, times it so well, and there's so much sort of discombobulation in the back line that he has all the time in the world to take the touch and finish it down to the left, while everyone stands around looking to the lineup.
A few things. I've been watching the highlights again as you speak, and Dunn, he dives in there, and you're asking for trouble in that part of the pitch so close to the line that it could be argued. And I think you've got to forgive the ref there, because if he sees it foul, it's a foul, and it's so close to that line, and he does really
Oh, he
get the
thunders in.
momentum.
Yeah.
The momentum as well takes him in the ball. By the time he finishes rolling, he's almost closer to the 6 yard box than he is the 18-yard box. So hey, I will forgive it there. On the O'Neill thing, and we'll leave it on this. I mean, he's a player who, it's like, you don't go rapid speed but can run the channels. He's not a player that's so tall you think of him as a target man, because he sometimes drops deep, and to get that pass, as you said. He's not a kind of a Matthew Shevin, bangs in loads of goals and is constantly there in the right place, right time, because he's trying to make things work. And as well as that, because he hasn't scored penalties or hasn't been on penalties, he hasn't been able to beef it up. I know that was not the case on Saturday, but he has not consistently been on the spot, and that can often help the raw numbers. So I mean, if for some reason he's available and he doesn't want to be, a side piece, that Larne doesn't feel as though he's going to be the main man there, or Larne want to try and change up the flavour of their strikers, if Paul O'Neill's available or is looking to find a new club, I mean, let the bidding begin, because I think many, many, many a club up and down the league would be very keen to try and add a player of his quality to their lineup. Coleraine, they've missed out now on second. They will be dangerous, I think, come this playoff. In fact, we could be sitting here where Coleraine Larne is the final in the European playoffs, so it'll be a very different game there once they shape up. But it's just this lack of, if Linfield have this aura and Linfield have this decisiveness and killer instinct, it's something the Coleraine just don't have. They're a bit up and at them. They're just not exactly disciplined in the way you'd want going forward and at the back.
It's the final piece of fine tuning. I think all the parts are there. There's just maybe a few bolts need tightened. Jamie Glacken, reluctant as I am to give the man credit, because if there's an Irish League player that will annoy opposition fans, the heir to Skinner in many ways, it's Jamie Glacken. Shevlin, buckets of quality, and we know that. I just think sometimes you're absolutely right. There is that lack of um, polish in the way that when you see a well constructed move by Linfield or something like that, that maybe it's a little messier on a Coleraine front. So very very close there, and you know what? Maybe a Joel Cooper sized washer might put all together.
I do think Larkin is going to have a big season next year if he can. He's had a few wee niggly injuries across this season, and particularly if he can play more centrally. And recently, when I've seen him play, it seems like he has had the ability to get into the hole and influence things. He is very dangerous and can break through lines unlike few players in this league. I talked with Stuart King a number of weeks ago about the end of the winger, and his analysis was, well, we don't let players make mistakes in the same way, and if you're looking to get that wonderful winner in the last 5 minutes where a player beats a man and just rollicks the ball into the top corner, unfortunately you're going to have to give him a bit of leeway to completely ruin a counter-attack 3 times beforehand to try and get a cross in. So I mean, that's a man who takes chances and can really unlock teams when he is cooking. Final game of the weekend to talk about. Ballymena, their push for 7th is over. It was really over the week before when they got dumped by Cliftonville. Jim Irvin doesn't seem happy. I look at this Ballymena side and I watch the highlights and I go, there's a lot of investment in this team, and yes, they have a good run, and there was so much change up. They've had to really figure out what this team looks like moving forward, from shape, from style of play, to setting up the way they attack. But I think the pressure's on next year. They've got to deliver, because this is not a team put together on a shoestring. And I like lots elements of the team, but they've just not had that real fortitude that others had. You talk about short shorts. I loved just the camera angle and everything of that Ben Kennedy curler, and then he did a wee pull up of his shorts. I don't know why that stuck with me so much.
Yeah, I'd be asking questions about that too, about why it struck me so much. But yeah, look, Ballymena are such a funny team. I'm nearly reluctant to say too much because we obviously have to face them last game of the season. They can really do damage on their day. They can really, when they're on all cylinders. We saw against Linfield a couple of weeks ago, the last time I was on, I think we talked about it actually, how if you get them firing on the counter and whatnot, they can be such a dangerous side. I know when we played them very recently, they were very dangerous on the counter. And yet there does just seem to be a missing element, and I don't quite know what it is. Carrick, to their credit, take another great result. My feelings on Carrick are there's no point saying, oh, they're putting up a fight now. Should have put up the fight this entire second half of the season. I think there was a lot of anti-football at times, and I think they're in their position as a result of that. Nice as a result as that is for them, and a nice bit of momentum carried on from absolutely hammering us last week. It's too little, too late.
With nuts and bolts earlier on, this is not a puzzle that really knits together quite perfectly, and they've had to be blunt in their choices to try and deal with games. And the goal that Ballymena scores, it's poor defending. Albert Watson gets kind of caught out between two players and then realizes, oh, that's the guy I'm supposed to be on. But look, they fight on as that experience of Kushti, who kind of hangs around and gets that goal laid on. That's for Ballymena. That's just a bit of frustration that they can't hold on. And look, whatever happens to Carrick Rangers now in the end of the season, I think it'll be a very different side, or it will need to be a very different side next year if they're playing top flight football, because this one hasn't been up to it. And next year, as I discussed earlier, if you aren't moving forward, you are 100% moving backwards. And there's not a whole lot of teams in this division who aren't really pushing on, and it's going to be a difficult situation if they just don't get their recruitment right, because they brought in a lot in January and they haven't made a fundamental difference. They plugged up a couple of holes, yes, but this is a team that needs to kind of take one or two steps back to figure out what they are going forward. And for them, hopefully that means that will be playing top flight football. Keelan, a fun thing about having you on is that you have your connections to that club I was at on Saturday, Portadown, and for kit nerds, which I'll admit I probably am as well. Portadown have jumped out and said they've got a deal with Adidas. Now that's not like crazy bonkers wow team signs with massive sports brand, right? But we've seen shifts and moves and trends, and often trends within the Irish League kind of pop up and other teams follow. Portadown are now coming out of a little mini trend, which we saw yourselves, Loughgall, and Dungannon dabble in with the kind of self. Now I know someone made them, but they were like almost own brand kind of kits, weren't they? Now Dungannon moved on from that this year back to like their home place of Rule Sport, and by Portadown's home place is probably Adidas. But hey, look, Irish League teams, they get their kits from somewhere. How's it work? I know you love your retro kits, and you've had a seat at the table for making this happen. How does it work? How have you found it? And what can Portadown fans and maybe other fans who might get Adidas look forward to?
Yeah, well, no, as you say, we are coming out the back of a deal with knowledge in teamwear, that sort of mini trend of what you might call in-house kits, and we had obviously the 1887 branding on it. That is now obviously making way for a deal with ProDirect. So ProDirect end up being your middleman in these sort of situations, as they are for many teams in the league, and for many brands beyond just Adidas. Quite a few teams signed up via Johnny at ProDirect, and yeah, look, it's an interesting process. You say about me having links or having a seat at the table. I'm just happy to be in the room. To be honest, there was this idea that, oh, sure, Keelan quite likes his kits. He might like to be involved in terms of a wee bit of design or whatever. I certainly don't have any big major role there. No, really nice to be part of the process to see a little of how it works. So we've been meeting with
I
ProDirect.
mean, Keelan, let's be fair. You're a nerd. I mean, you showed me once at a game, and because I kind of looked at it and goes, "What is that?" And it was a super retro. It almost looked like kind of the rugby kits you get at school. It was red, and it had this crafted, like, was it a big P or PFC on it and
Yeah,
somewhere, and I go, where'd you get that? And he goes, I made it.
yeah, I did.
I mean, you're making your own bespoke retro Portadown tops. I mean, that's a passion and expertise any club would be delighted to tap into.
Yeah, that's my 1960s Wilbur Cush inspired Portadown shirt.
I mean, come
Yeah,
on.
homemade badge. Yeah, no, look,
It looked great. No, I am joking. It did look great, but it shows that I would say you absolutely have a right to showcase that knowledge and that passion.
yeah, no, look, it's been great. We've been meeting with Johnny at ProDirect from prior to Christmas right the way back sort of to the start of the season in talks there. I know the board have worked very hard at getting that deal. Look, people love big brands. There is an attraction generally to being with one of the big boys, so to speak. And Adidas is a brand that is quite synonymous with a lot of Portadown fans. I mean, I'm sitting here, nobody can see, in my 2005 Irish Cup winning Adidas shirt. Certainly for much of the late 90s and the 2000s, Adidas and Portadown have been sort of hand in hand, ebony and ivory, side by side in the piano key. Look, it's great. You get to chat. There's obviously a lot that comes into it in terms of on the committee with lots of other people with focusing on the commercial side, what we can offer to supporters in the club shop in terms of kits, leisure wear, training gear. And you have to look after your team as well. So not just the first team, but the entire football club. So that includes this year, and you may already see, and if you haven't, you can go over onto the socials for the ladies team to see that they have their own bespoke kits this year, looking after the teams in the NIFL phase as well, and making sure that they're all accounted for. So look, there's so many moving pieces. It's a fascinating thing. In terms of what you can look out for, we've got some lovely kits coming for next season. You'll be able to see those over the summer. In terms of leisure wear, there's some exciting little lines coming in that I know supporters are going to love. And even I've been given the green light to let you know to sort of watch this space for before the end of the season, shall we say, for maybe a little not a sneak peek because it'll be a one-off thing. It's sitting on a maybe at the moment as pieces come together, but certainly keep an eye out for how we're going to kick off our relationship with Adidas.
And let's be fair. I know you're not the person sitting there with the books and the accountants, but is there more than just right? Who's going to offer us the best deal here?
Yeah, look, it's not just a numbers game. Obviously, look, we're an Irish League club. We're a part-time club, and finances are important. And obviously, I'm not going to go into any of that. It's a consideration, but you're looking for who's actually going to work with you. Who are you going to be able to do business with? You know, there's a lot of moving pieces when it comes into making sure that your team are supplied, making sure that you have gear in the club shop, all these different things. You want to know that you have somebody that you're able to work with. And as Johnny, the Pro Direct guy, sort of says, at the end of the day, it's in his interest that we're happy because that makes us more likely to continue the deal or to continue to order different things and whatnot. So we're quite confident that we'll have sort of a relationship here that benefits both.
And one of the things, because if you're coming in here and you're chatting designs, right? The one thing, at least I remember, over the past, let's say 25 years, whatever, I've been a fan of Irish League clubs and have an interest about the kits. I mean, all this chat of bespoke versus teamwear and all the rest of it. I mean, you're not having senior Mr. Adidas sitting there getting out your what is our Pro X25 Shamrock era kit for this year, but do you have more flexibility than perhaps in previous years where you can kind of mix it up ever so slightly? There's more customization than just what used to be is you can pick from 8 red kits in the magazine.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, you know yourself, Peter. Somebody who's an interest in it. Kit culture, if you want to call it that, has boomed over recent years. It's always something I've been interested in. You know, I've north of 30 Portadown shirts in my collection at the moment. Anyone with any others, feel free to contact me. But it's it's changed drastically. In terms of what we have, we have a bespoke deal with Adidas via ProDirect. So yeah, that absolutely does give us a certain element of design choice and customization. Which is important because if you're going to do things and look, templates are great and often they look very smart and whatnot, but you want to be able to craft your own identity to a
And
degree.
it's not going to be a
Don't
million miles away from one either, let's be fair.
No, no, look, we're not coming out with one of these one-off like Real Madrid third, with dragons and all over it and whatnot. For me, good kit design is classic kit design, and there's always going to be elements of that. But in order to have a bit of choice, to actually have that sort of luxury of being able to have your input is really, really nice. Yeah.
And when did the process start? Were you saying it's January? Is it earlier? Because that's what all the Premier League teams seem to be talking about. That I remember genuinely chatting to someone that looked after like very very senior in Puma back over the past 20 years, and they were saying by the time they're looking at some big kits 18 months, 2 years in advance. I appreciate that's not what's happening with Portadown, but I mean this hasn't been in the past fortnight. Let's look what's in the magazine.
No, no, certainly not. Like I said, we've been meeting with Johnny some sort of prior to Christmas and back at the start of the season. Obviously, with this being a new deal, there's a lot of sort of first time setup, I guess. In terms of getting to know what our start of season orders and stuff might be and whatnot. Working a lot of numbers and stuff. In theory, that'll be a more streamlined process next year. But no, you have to be out at early doors. I mean, I would be me. I would love to be designing the following season's kits already. I even throwing together a couple of ideas myself and getting booze in the chat for even suggesting things such discussions this early. But the way I see it, Adidas are a big company. ProDirect obviously are our middleman. you have to be proactive yourself. So it's about getting that stuff done early, and I know that's something that we're sort of always keen to do.
What would you say this year's been your favorite kit and why? Home or away?
Of the top flight,
Yes. Well, you can tell me you
yeah,
love Rather Island Rangers if you want.
yeah. Well, actually, there are a few kits I like, and there's some excellent manufacturers and stuff like there. Controversial one maybe. I actually like Linfield's home kit. I have to say. The collar style wouldn't be mine. See if that has a polo shirt collar, that's an instant classic for me. But it's not maybe in Macron's style. I think Larne are very clean with their kits. I think that little subtle zigzag that they have, it looks very 1960s with the tight round neck, white collar. Big fan of that. Look, there's a lot of excellent kits up and down the league. I think we're quite blessed. I always like, do you remember you would have eras in the Premier League where you had Sunderland, Stoke, Southampton all in, and it's all red and white stripes and whatnot. I think we're quite blessed in that because we are such an old, like the Irish Football League is an old institution, the clubs involved are old institutions, and we have a really nice, would you say, color palette in front of us and unique designs that are unique to each club. I mean, I don't think there's a Glentoran color scheme anywhere else in the world that I can think of. It's brilliant that way.
Yeah, like there's lots of blues. Although Glenavon went very kind of royal blue when previously there would be more kind of bright, not sky blue, but there would be a bit more. Uh, they wouldn't be as kind of dark and
Yeah,
royal,
if you
I
go
think,
to the
as they are
90s
this
and
year.
stuff, you can
Perhaps
see that clearly.
that's what they traditional is now.
Yeah, they've definitely went a bit darker this year. I think some of their stuff has been great. For the record, some of their teamwear in particular is really really nice. So look, we're excited. All I would say for Portadown supporters and kit fans and enthusiasts in general is watch this space.
Portdown's got that rouginess. You've always had the red shorts. The other red
Yeah,
teams, Larne and Cliftonville, they've dabbled with alterations, haven't they?
no, well, we are the Reds in this league. I'll
Wait,
maintain that.
well, you're
I
the Ports,
mean,
but yes.
no, no, but in terms of the team that were like we are the red team in my view. Cliftonville, I think, have had a lot of white down through the years, white sleeves, different things, white shorts at times. At Larne, barely a Premiership team, to be honest, if you ask me. So that leaves ourselves in what is a very classic and iconic full red. Yeah.
And you were also saying to me actually before about how this year's kit played homage, and I can see it now to like the early, was it 2001 kind of
It's
2002?
the 01-02, our last league title. You sort of see that PFC which we included on the kit this year. Sort of to mark our 100th year in the Irish League. It's 1924 that Portadown made a step up to join the Football League. And we sort of wanted something on the kit that would mark that. We saw an opportunity to do a callback to what is a really, sort of time of success. People think of Vinnie Arkins in this period. They think of Kyle Neal, who will be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year and stuff like that. So a real nice throwback. And even the goalkeeper kit's very deliberate, given sort of the Mickey Keenan vibe in the blue and the gold. So yeah, look, there's a whole lot goes into it, and it's lovely.
Do you have any strong kit opinions, sir? I know some people automatically say no to black kits. Do you have anything as decisive as that?
No, I don't have anything that super strong that I disagree with. I think you can overdo things sometimes, and I know that's something we're conscious of. Where if you have a nice little special, even if it is a traditional color, that you maybe sort of keep it special. I'm a big fan of collars, polo collars. They seem to be a dying art in the game. Although I see, particularly in the League of Ireland down south, that they're making a bit of a comeback. So hopefully that makes its way north of the border as well, because I'm a big advocate of
That was a bit fun. We'll look ahead to some of these games this weekend. Actually, before we do that, a hop, skip, and the jump away from Shamrock Park. Anna United, what are they up to? I mean, they're doing it again. Late run last year within a hair's whisker of getting a sneaky little playoff spot. That would have been the third season on a row. Could it be 3 seasons in 4 if they were to get that? They're on fire. right now is like 6 wins in a row they've had. They beat out what looked like, probably still is, the champions elect in Bangor, the only team that really looks like they could stop them. Well, they could lose both, to be fair. Is the Welders. But here come Anna United.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting time. Up at your live event in Pug Uglies the other week, I had the opportunity to chat to Stuart King for a little while, and one of the things that we discussed is just what a great position sort of mid Ulster football is in at the moment. In terms of, obviously you've had Loughgall up in the top flight, ourselves, Glenavon, Dungannon Swifts on the up. In terms of the championship, you have Anna United absolutely flying and punching above their weight, and Armagh City, who have given a real good account of themselves this year as well. Below that in intermediate, Sunnyside, all these teams as well that are really making an impact. Dollingstown. So, look, it's interesting. Anna United are the there was a real worry that are Anna United really going to be our rivals? You know, is this what we've resigned ourselves to? And that's no disrespect to Anna United. In fact, a student of mine today said that I had to squeeze Anna United in at some point. So I'm glad that you actually brought it up. Look, they're flying, and I think they can be a real threat. If I were in Park Rangers' position right now, I would be sweating at the prospects of playing either the Welders or the Anna,
I
because
totally agree. Anna are scary for anybody.
yeah, a lot of quality in that squad. A lot of exported on boys in that squad as well. And like Stephen Murray up top, still a threat. Really, really special player. Swan in that squad is somebody I've always been a big fan of as well. So look, there's a team there, and you know what? At the end of the day, you can talk about local rivals and stuff. It's great to see other local teams doing well, and for the Anna, I wish them all the best.
And they have goals. I'm just looking here. 15 goals in the last 4 games. That's scary. It's still in the hands of the Welders and of course Bangor. So Welders hang on, and they do get that win against Dundela, which could really scupper themselves. It's looking difficult for Limavady. That looks like they're out with 2 games to go, because there's 3 points in them and the Welders. So they need them to fall off, and I don't think they can fall off without playing the Anna. Let's see. Why did I just say the Anna there?
Always has to be the Anna.
Yeah, it was, yeah. Well, seemingly so. No, yeah. So Annie and I actually have already scuppered them there. So Wells against Bangor there, big game there, and then it is Anna against the Mavati up at the showground. So that can maybe knock out Anna themselves. So ho ho ho, here we go. Yeah, that, and then the showdown for there. So yeah, championship delivering drama as expected. But let's look ahead to this weekend. Larne Linfield, the one on Friday evening. It is getting showed there, and as we spoke about earlier, it just has Larne win or they're scuppering themselves, particularly with Glentoran going against a Swifts team with very little to play for. So just by the way that Linfield are going, isn't there? They are on course to equal the most amount of points in a 12-team league, I think.
Yes, that's right. I did see that. If they come away with maximum points, they will equal that record. So yeah, look, and I think I don't know if there's a chip there, but it's certainly something you've sort of heard coming out of the Linfield camp a little bit, how sort of maybe stung Linfield were at having missed out on the title the past 2 years to Larne. I don't think they'll be giving Larne any leeway here. There'll be no, oh, we've won the league already, let's take it handy. I think they'll be wanting to keep Larne in difficult positions. Larne will really, really be chasing that second spot, and I don't think Linfield are planning on giving it to them, regardless of what they think of Glentoran.
I agree. I'm going to go 2-0 there. The other then big game sees Dungannon go to Stagmore Park again. After scoring 4 goals, I mean Glentoran can trip over their own shoelaces if they wish, but I think that'll be a 2-1. Might need a penalty to get them across the line, but as long as they don't have a howler at the back, I think they will push on. They have all the initiative to get the win here, and they can't falter.
Yeah, no, for me, I'm saying as well. Look, Stanmore's a tough place to go. I'd certainly fancy sort of a 2-1 Glentoran, maybe even a 2-0. Swift are good on their home turf, but as you say, it's all for Glentoran in terms of trying to keep that position they have. So,
and look, if Larne do lose that game, there's an onus on Glentoran to win it, because then that cuts that out. That guarantees them second. So
yeah,
even ahead of a mini playoff in themselves, Larne against Glentoran, that has to be the push to get that across the line, and I think they will, although I can't see that being a 2-2. Cruz Coleraine, it's damage limitation when it comes to injuries and the like there. I kind of think for Coleraine that they'll be asked to bounce back, and I think they will. I think they'll get that 2-0.
yeah. I think Coleraine, the turnaround this tail end of the season is maybe something that's been slept on a little bit. I think it's been absolutely fantastic, and if this is the turnaround that they're doing on this side of the transfer window, I dread to see what form they're going to come out the other end of the summer in. I think in terms of the Crews, um, they are a team that for me have dropped off majorly. I was hoping that would be before the top six was decided. They have obviously managed to work their way in there, but I mean they're on the back of a loss, a draw, and a loss. Um, I just see Coleraine coming away with that one, to be honest.
A win there would mean that they'd be avoiding sixth, because Crews are 51, Swifts are 51, Coleraine 52. So victory there means that they won't finish sixth, and of course sixth important because no, actually the way this works out now, well, this means you're bottom. It means you get no home games, because you want fourth. You're not going to finish third, because that means you get a home game in the fourth, fifth playoff game. Elsewhere, we talked about it. Portadown against Cliftonville. I think if you're a Ports fan, I think chatting to John McAllister after the game, one of the Portadown backroom team, he kind of looked slightly crestfallen that ultimately their chance at seventh is gone. So, I mean, do you play the Damians and the other children that could be there for next year, or do you try and mix it up? There'll be no Ben Wiley, of course.
No, I think you go for it. I think in particular with Cliftonville, they're a team that we have really stepped up against this year. We've had a fantastic run of results. Lovely draw there, which you and I came off the back of the last podcast. Nice win before Christmas. I think take the game to them. I think particularly Portadown fans, particularly as we come into the last two games of the season. It's what Nell says. You want to finish the season strong and give a good account of ourselves. There's no point going out with a damp whimper. So no, go give them a fight, make them work for it, and we'll see how it goes.
If you were on the playing squad panel like you are with this kit, I mean, I haven't heard much about Lewis McKinnon, who I think's a contender for maybe featuring in that team of the season back line. I mean, would Portadown risk him? Would you want them to risk him as a fan? If now, because he's been dealing with ankle injury or something like that. I mean, there was talk that it might only be 6 weeks.
Yeah, look, for me, particularly when you have somebody as young,
because you've got that back line looked not full of first teamers.
No, it's not, and look, and it's something that maybe isn't discussed a lot. I know Cliffy highlighted it in the post match interview. After the match on Saturday, we're missing a lot of key players. I want to say key players, I mean our starters in that regard. People joked at the start of the season about Niall Curry's big busts of squad players and whatnot, and the size of the squad. We have had to dip into those tanks all season as boys have missed out. I think to their credit, I think Aaron Trainer, somebody who hasn't played a lot of games this season, has done very well coming in into the breach there. And Ismala on loan for Bohemians, again, has looked really, really solid, fitting in beside him. That's two boys that have not played together and have really held their own. So, look, it's tough when you're missing the likes of Barris, the likes of Lewis, who are real talents and young talents in this league, who nearly play beyond their years. But um, you have to deal with what football throws at you, and we know what we have in the squad, and we know that if everybody is on their game and everybody turns up and everybody has that sort of same desire and fight, that we can take it to any team.
I mean, it's award season. Who would personally be your Portadown Player of the Year and why?
Oh, well, yeah, we are getting towards the award season, and we have our end of season dinner coming up in May. But look, there are a lot of candidates you can go for. I think for me, you've mentioned Lewis McKinnon. He has been fantastic. A real sort of gem that at the start of the season, I didn't really know what to make of. I thought, okay, here's a nice young centre back coming in. I think Lee Chapman is always Mr. Dependable. He's been fantastic. I think Stephen McCullough is definitely in with a shout. The experience he brings and some of the assists and goals that he's got this season have been fantastic. I think Aaron McCarry has been brilliant. For somebody who had so many critics at his last club, I think he silenced a lot of them with his performances this year. Real safe pair of hands. Look, it's very hard to narrow me down to one here. It's actually not something that I had really considered at this stage yet. Um, any of those boys.
2 games before the end of the season, you haven't considered your Player of the Year.
Well, I look this these are beyond me. These decisions, Peter. I'm sure there are decisions made. Lee Chapman, I think, always his name gets thrown in there. He is Mr. Dependable. You never get less than a 7 out of 10 from him. I think that's massive. I think in terms of impact, though, um, I think the likes of Stephen McCullough absolutely fantastic and really dependable. So there's a strong argument for that as well. That's as much as you're getting.
Surprise isn't. Yep, surprise isn't McKinnon there, but understand maybe I'm
You
just
know what?
overhyped
No,
on him.
no,
And you know what? I've heard this from some people about Lee Chapman, about this kind of dependency thing. I think one thing I've noticed watching him, and this is an underrated trait, because McCulloch on the other side's quite, he's probably scored the odd goal. He can do the free kick. He can whip the crosses in. But and this is absolutely the one trait that people don't look at. And I think some of the exciting players that people talk about in this position, they often don't do this well, and then it's forgotten about. I mean, Lee Chapman is very good on one-on-one duels.
fantastic.
Very good,
You talk.
and that is often an underrated. So I of all those players, I'd probably go McKinnon, but I would back Lee Chapman there. I'm very unfashionable, but underrated for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the death of the wingers with Stuart King. I think Portadown is a real lovely spot for wingers. Lee spent a lot of his career as a winger. He's obviously playing at right back, but the overlaps that he runs kind of makes him that. Likewise on the left, McCullough, obviously with his past playing wide, he's somebody that likes to get forward and run those channels. James Teelan for me is the quintessential winger, and it was great to see him firing on all cylinders on Saturday. And then even the likes of Josh Ukick, who when he's confident and when he's flying, really nice feet, nice bit of pace. There are wingers at Portadown if that's what you're starved of.
I'm going to back Cliftonville there.
Yeah, yeah, no, look, I understand it. I'm gonna go for an optimistic 1-1, which doesn't do us sort of resigns us to no European football. But look, I will be in Azerbaijan or Slovenia or Kazakhstan at some point in the next 10 years, and that'll be
10
happy enough
years.
for
Good
me.
luck. Loughgall against Carrick. It will be. No, they've got 2 home games here. It's one of those. Could be Barnstormer back and forward, or could be a dribble. Yeah, I'm gonna go 2-0 Loughgall.
Um, yeah, it's an interesting one. There's not really a whole much in it. I think I don't think it's necessarily 2-0 lock all. I think on the back of the form that Carrick have had, that they've just sort of picked up at the end, a little bit of momentum, a little bit of goal scoring from the the old timers, if you want to call them, up top. I'm looking at a 2-0 Carrick here.
I like this Glenavon Ballymena game, weirdly, not to be that weird guy, but genuinely, like, Ballymena
I
have
can't
probably
think of
got an
anything
oil,
worse.
and
So
I think this Ballymena side will be either very changed or they'll have a bit of a rollicking and they'll go for it. And as much as this Glenavon team, in my opinion, struggle to create clear-cut chances, they look good in the ball, have nice sequences, and maybe after a couple of games where they've played and they've found their feet, maybe these players come to the fore, these younger ones for Glenavon, and make this an interesting game. So chance for like a ding dong, 2 red cards, old school when Glenavon and Ballymena are fighting for 7th. I'm going to say 2-1 Glenavon at home.
yeah, I mean it's one of these ones where Glenavon are resigned to their position at this stage with regards to the points totals. Um, a great position for them to be in when we consider how things were going earlier in the season and the turnaround they've had under McLaughlin. Um, I think on their home patch, saw them put in some really nice performances there recently. They've now been in what you would definitely call a slump in form. Um, I'm gonna go for an Ireland 1-1 draw. I don't think it's the game you think you're getting.
Well, I was called out by a few of them last week, so I will just have to accept that. But Keelan, thank you very much for your insight into games, into kits, as well into your fondness or not so much fondness of Mr. Fisher's shorts.
It's an easy joke. It now sounds like an obsession. You've now made that. You've
That's
now made
fine.
that
That's what I'm
more
here
of
to
a
do.
thing.
Hey, we have bits on this show, and we're sticking to it, even if he goes on and moves on. Good luck, Mr. Leeper. Any plans this summer?
Um, in terms of the summer, no, not really. A lot of work to do in terms of prepping for next year. I'm at that stage of the career where you can't really you can't really rest too much. I'm going to the Lake District here over Easter, so I'll enjoy that. Um,
Where is the Lake District?
Tempting
I
in
know
sort
it's
of
in England.
Cumbria. Yes,
Yeah,
I'm
where's
I'm
Cumbria?
toying with the idea of maybe taking in a Carlisle United match, but we'll see how timings work out
Where do
there.
you fly to go to the Lake District?
Well, we're taking the car over on the boat.
Ferry.
Yeah,
Bold.
hard to beat. Old school travel, very traditional. No, look, excited to see what the summer brings. I'm always a fan of getting into pre-season, seeing the sign-ins, obviously kit releases around the league. I think if you want to not that you'll obviously I'm sure look at this a look ahead episode in the future, but I think there's big things coming from the Irish League next season. I think this season has been fantastic in so many ways. Maybe Linfield running away with it has put a damp squib in the certainly in the eyes of some commentators who talk about the worst league yet. But for me, the middle of the park has been so competitive, and I'm really interested to see how the pecking order starts to look as we get into the pre-season and into the September August start.
I will leave the back of my days until we get to be people saying back in my days. So, Mr. Leeper, thank you very much for your musings. I'll chat to you again very, very soon.
Right, bye-bye.
Now's a good time to get yourself all set up and ready so you don't forget over the next few weeks to lock in, get yourself subscribed, followed to the podcast on whatever your platform of choice may be Spotify, may it be Apple Podcasts, whatever, because if you get that sorted, it means that if and when, maybe, keep it a mystery, I upload any podcasts beyond the regular season, my regular Tuesday night upload, it means you get it. You don't have to go, what? Hold on, you'll upload the podcast 2 weeks ago? What? How did I miss this? You don't need to miss it. Social media is fickle, but that little notification is. So, get it locked in, and then you're fine. You're good to go. You can, of course, though, keep up to date with that fickle beast that is those social media platforms. It's Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter are the main ones. By the way, it's at Kicking Match on all of them. If you're looking for some live music, the place to be this Saturday night in Belfast is the Wood Burning Savages gig at the Black Box. If you're there, I'll see you there for some fine rock and roll music. Until then, Talio.